Hello, everybody, and welcome to part 15-ish of my Fire Emblem 6 hard mode chapter guide. Today, we're going to be looking at chapter 12. This is the first chapter post route split, the route split that we've been looking at. So whether you did A or B, it doesn't matter. You will be doing this chapter. Now, this chapter is fairly straightforward. There are a few little kinks we have to talk about. This is also a time-sensitive chapter because in order to go to the Gaiden chapter, we do have to complete this in 20 turns. Also, Elfin has to be alive. He's the bard we recruited in the last chapter. Now, this is the B route, so I do have Elfin. I don't know if that works the same for Lalum. I've never lost the dancer on this chapter. I don't think it does. I think it's only if you specifically went B and if you, well, of course, recruited Elfin because everyone does. Yeah, I don't think it counts for Lalum, but we have Elfin on this. Obviously, I'll be bringing him. But yeah, let's talk a little bit about the chapter just before we start because it's going to be important for the preps. There are a few different side objectives here. There's chests on this side. There's also chests on this side. We're also going to be recruiting 2 new characters here. If you've talked to Kath on both of the subsequent chapters that she showed up, which obviously we have, this is where you can recruit her. There are other opportunities. I believe she shows up in 3 more maps. I think it's 3 after this point, but you really want to recruit her here if you can. Obviously, it's just nice to recruit her as early as we can. And she can be really annoying on those maps. She's going to be appearing over here and going to these chests. Now, Roy spawns on this side, and you're going to have to go all the way around here and then over here to recruit her. So just be aware that you might want to break through this area very quickly, because that can be kind of tedious. And again, this whole chapter is time sensitive. The other character is Ray over here, who can be recruited by either Chad or Lou. So if you're going to bring both thieves, which again I would recommend putting Chad on this side just to recruit, or of course you can use Lou, who I think is also really great over on this side. Now, the other thing that I want to mention is actually the name of this chapter, which is, I believe it's like the true enemy or something like that. This boss looks absolutely insane for this stage of the game, and it's because he is. He's not the boss that's going to stay throughout the entire chapter. He's a much later boss. I believe the boss of this chapter actually changes 2 times or 3 times or something. But what it's going to wind up being is Manakete. This is going to be our first fight with Manaketes. Manaketes in this game are really strong. I wouldn't worry too much about them. They're kind of a fixture of the late game, and they do appear throughout, but usually they don't move or do much. But this one we actually do have to fight. This is why I didn't mean to not bring him, but this is why the Durandal, which has bonus damage against Manaketes, is really good, or the Worm Slayer that we had earlier. So I'd highly recommend bringing the Worm Slayer. Really important, because again, this chapter is time sensitive. There are other ways to do this. Magic also hits it pretty hard, but other than effective damage and magic, it's really hard to damage the Manakete boss here. So make sure that you have that. But yeah, I'm going to do some preps here. As I said, I would highly recommend bringing 2 thieves for either side, and then we want Lou on this side. But I'll set up my preps, and then I'll come back and probably just talk about it a little bit more. Alright, so I've just finished my preps. There's a few more things I want to talk about before we actually start the chapter here. Now, as I said, I think splitting up thieves is really important. If you only have 1 thief at this point, you can still do this because, as I said, we are going to be recruiting Kath. Again, she does come from over here, so my recommendation would be to put the thief on this side and get these chests, because it's going to be really hard to double back and get these chests. Whereas once you recruit Kath, you can either do it after she's already pilfered these chests and get the items when you recruit her, or you can recruit her and then use her to get these chests. So if you are missing a thief potentially, if you're missing 2 thieves, then it's going to be tough to get all the chests. But if you're only missing 1 thief, you can do it that way, so just be aware of that. But if you do have 2 thieves, I would highly recommend splitting them. This side is a lot less combat intensive. There's a fighter here, a knight, and another fighter, but that's pretty much all you're going to have to fight. This guy doesn't move. Nobody will destroy this wall if you don't. So I wouldn't worry too much about this side. I have Rucker here because he doesn't have 2 range, so he's not going to be very useful over here. And he'll support my Pegasus Knights over here. So yeah, just somebody who's strong enough to fight these 3 units, and you should be good over there. Over here, on the other hand, we're going to be doing a lot more combat. There's a lot of 2 range. There's a bunch of archers and shamans, as you can see. This is where Lou is going to come in handy. He is pretty frail, so just be aware that you do have to be a little bit careful. There's a lot of 2 range that can come at you, but yeah, basically anyone with 2 range is going to be really useful on this side. Lance has a javelin, so we're going to be using that quite a bit. The last thing I want to mention is that there is a sleep staff guy. Oh, sorry. there is a sleep staff guy. Now you can try to maybe rush him, but there's really no way I think to get in here and actually kill him before he's used all 3 of his sleep staff uses. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. Now, I'm not an expert on this, but I believe the way that they prioritize status devs is depending on your like deployment. So one of the problems that you'll face in this chapter quite a bit if you bring if you haven't brought Chad in a while and then you bring him is that he'll be at the bottom of your deployment, so he'll get prioritized. Now I put Deke down here. We're gonna put this to the test. I believe this is how it works. Deke should get slept, and then I only have 1 restore staff. You have multiple restore staffs. You can put them on both sides and just restore whoever gets slept. But hopefully he will sleep Deke. I put the restore staff on Clarion, and we can just restore Deke. Now, on the other hand, although this chapter is time sensitive, I don't know if I mentioned this, but it's 20 turns. You have to complete this. It's really not the end of the world to have to get through like 5 turns of sleep with your like Thief, for example. So I wouldn't worry too much about it, but it can be kind of annoying. There is also a sleep staff guy here, so just be aware of that. This is also where restore can be really useful. This one can be really annoying because like Roy can get slept potentially, which can get really annoying for actually completing the chapter in the requisite turns. So just be aware of the 2 sleep staff guys. There's also a Siege Tome here, but if you notice something, he has 28 hit. Eclipse is about the worst Siege Tome they've ever made in any Fire Emblem game. I have no clue why they gave this guy Eclipse. It literally can't kill your units, and even if your unit has 0 avoid, this guy would still only have 28 hit. So this guy's pretty useless. In fact, if you want some experience for somebody, you can go beat the crap out of him. But yeah, this is the formation that I like to use, something along these lines for the chapter. And yeah, the strategy, as I said, is going to be basically just work your way through these different hallways and get chests as you go. So I'll probably be skipping around a little bit from here on out, and we'll get this chapter underway. Okay, so just really quick, there's a couple more things that I want to mention. This guy does have a killer axe, so just be aware. He will, I think, basically always prioritize hand axe if you attack him, or if you have like a 1-range guy. That's why Rucker's so good at this. But if you put like a 2-range guy, like someone with a javelin or a hand axe of their own, he'll probably prioritize the killer axe, so just be aware of that. The other thing is the actual boss himself. Like I said, for some reason he does change twice. It's that Paladin boss I didn't show, but it changes into a Wyvern Lord that we're going to be fighting in a couple of chapters, and this Manakete. And you can see right now, this guy's 23 defense. So just be aware that, again, effective damage really important here. He's also really strong. He's got 35 attack and really good hit. His resistance is not the best. The other thing I want to mention is that Deke did get slept. So again, deployment slot, make sure that whoever you are prepared to get slept over and over again is at the bottom of your deployment slot. You can also go this even further, especially if you don't have restore, by like having, maybe I could have put like Alan and then Lance lower as well and then use them all. I'm again going to be basically spamming restore on Deke and just having him get slept over and over again. But just be aware, deployment slot really important for not having that issue. Okay, so just real quick, this is the last sleep staff use this guy has used, so we're just going to restore Deke, and then we should be good. You can also use this, of course, to bait out the sleep staff guy at the end as well. Like I mentioned, obviously you can push that guy as well, but there's one other thing I want to mention. As I said, over here, Rucker, especially with the Armor Slayer, can take out these guys pretty easily. This guy right here, so this is actually the only guy, if you stand right here, the only 2-range that can get to you. This is kind of minor, but it's really nice. Number one, if you're still trying to train like lure somebody, as long as this guy can't one-shot you, because that is a possibility. He's really strong. You can get some really good experience by chipping him and then eventually killing him by having somebody stand here. Also, if you have somebody stand here, I'm probably going to do this with Lou, it means that you don't have to deal with this guy when you get to this choke right here. So just be aware that by putting somebody here, and like I said, I am going to do this with Lou because I think Lou can survive even with his low health. Yeah, he's actually got pretty good defense. You can do that, but you can do this with anyone you're trying to train, again, as long as they can survive a hit. Okay, I think I mentioned this, but another really important thing to mention is that this sniper does not move, which is really good to know because the sniper is really strong. He's got a silver bow, which means that when you're moving up this way, you don't have to worry about him coming over and attacking. There is a shaman down here, Alan just killed him, that does move, so just be aware of that. You can potentially like get somebody sniped, I guess. But that sniper does not move, so don't worry about it. Okay, so Kath just showed up. I just want to show where she shows up from. It is turn, what turn is it? 8. She shows up from up here, and she's basically, what's going to happen is she's going to come down here, she's going to open this door. Actually, putting somebody in front of this door is really good too. And basically just stand here. We'll see that in a minute. So obviously Roy is still over here. We're going to want to get him over here as quickly as we can to do this recruit. But this is where she comes from, so just be aware of that. And this is also Ray, who, like I said before, can be recruited with either Lou or Chad. So just be aware that we need to be doing that. And I'll talk about both of them when we recruit them in a minute here. Alright, so we are about to recruit Ray. There are two other things that I wanted to just mention about this chapter in particular. One of the things that I mentioned earlier is Roy potentially getting slept. Now, if it's true about the deployment slot order mattering for the status staff, which I think we've seen considering they targeted Deke, that probably means that Roy has a very small chance of ever being targeted unless he's the only one in range of any kind of status staff. This is probably to, like, make sure that you're not just losing to Roy getting Berserked or whatever, so just be aware that it's very unlikely that he'll probably get slept, although I don't know that for sure. The other thing that I wanted to mention is reinforcements on this chapter, because we're about to see them. Now, most of them will actually be coming very shortly, and they'll come from the outside, so up here and down here. I wouldn't worry too much about them. We should be progressing through this chapter in a timely fashion, so they probably won't be able to catch up with you. There are reinforcements for these stairs in the boss's room, but they don't start until turn 17. So if it does come that late and you're, like, time-sensitively killing the boss, like on turn 19 or something, make sure you're standing on these. But it's turn 10 for us, so we'll probably get this done and not have to worry too much about that. But just be aware it's not until turn 17. The other thing is we're going to be recruiting Ray with Lou. So I'll talk a little bit about Ray. Ray is an sort of unfortunate character. I've talked about this before, but hard mode bonuses play a big part in who's really good in this game. Basically, other than Marcus, the three best characters in this game, Rucker, Melody, and Percival, all have really strong hard mode bonuses. Ray, despite being an enemy, does not get hard mode bonuses because unfortunately he starts on the chapter, which for some reason means he doesn't get them. Now, his stats aren't terrible, and he's a really good level, but unfortunately they're just kind of low. He's very similar, I think, to Geese, but he's a much better class, so I will give him credit for that. Again, his stats are just kind of low. He's not very bulky. His speed is kind of low. His constitution is low too, and dark magic is heavy. Although, in this game it's actually not so heavy. Never mind, so that's not a big deal. But his magic is quite good. Ray's a character that I think is a decent, like, tempo promote, and even in the very late game will still offer really nice healing with really good magic. But as far as being offensively capable, he'll never really get the speed to be able to, like, double. He'll just hit pretty hard, which is still useful. But yeah, I think characters like Lou, Lilina, Hugh even will offer you a lot more in the way of offensive magic than Ray. His skill is pretty good, so the low hit of the dark magic isn't so bad, but it can still be an issue. So I probably wouldn't recommend training Ray if you have the entire cast at your disposal, but I don't think that training Ray is, like, a bad idea necessarily, especially if you, like, lost Lou and you're looking for healers to train. Then I think Ray can actually be a really good option. So the other thing that I wanted to mention, because we are going to be recruiting Kath here, is, as I said before, if you just stand behind the door, Kath will just not know what to do. Basically just block off all her opportunity to get chests. She'll just stand here, and she's really easy to recruit. So go ahead and recruit Kath, and then I'll talk about her as well. Kath is the third thief you recruit in the game, which is kind of crazy, considering the other two GBA games give you 1 and 2 thieves. I guess technically 2 in Sigersov as well, with Renok. I wouldn't say Kath is a particularly good unit, but none of the thieves, like, statistically really matter, because there is no promotions in this game. Basically, she's slightly better than Chad, but quite a bit worse than Estelle. So yeah, there's not much to say about her, honestly. If you need an extra thief, she's great. If you don't, you'll probably never deploy her. There's really nothing special about her. Her strength is absolutely atrocious, but again, stats don't really matter. So she's, yeah, nice to have around, but for our purposes, we'll probably, unless you're deploying 2 thieves, you'll probably never deploy her. So yeah, there's a little bit left in the chapter. There are 2 ways to approach the boss's room here. You can go through the wall here, or you can open the door. It doesn't really matter. I'm just kind of opening the wall slowly with Alan, and then we'll get Rucker over here to kill the boss with the Wormslayer, so I'll probably come back when we do that and talk a little bit more about the boss. Alright, so we're getting ready to fight the boss. There's a few things that I wanted to show off here. As we can see, Rucker looks really good fighting this boss. He does a lot of damage with the effective Wormslayer and has really good crit. The boss does have crit on him, and of course he'll super die to a crit. So this can be kind of dangerous. I mentioned before that magic users also do pretty good against the boss. As we can see, Lou doesn't do a ton of damage, but he does pretty consistent damage, and obviously won't take counterattacks. So this is going to kind of depend on where you are in the chapter. For us, it's only turn 13, so we can absolutely take the time to do this in a safe manner. But it may be turn like 19 for you or something, and you may very well have to do this. The other option is potentially giving the Wormslayer to someone else, like Lance, and using his support with Alan to be a bit more consistent. So again, it's all going to depend on how time sensitive this is for you. The other thing I want to mention are the reinforcements. These are really strong units at this stage in the game, these reinforcements. You do not want to fight these guys. This guy's 27 attack. You do not want to fight these guys. You shouldn't have to, but just be aware that, like, even if you're not doing this in the time required, you kind of have to still do it in a fairly fast manner because you will absolutely wind up dying to the reinforcements there. So I'm going to do this with Rucker just because I think it's kind of cool, and then we'll do some chip with Lou, and we'll see how this goes. But as I said, in order to get to the Guidance chapter, we do have to do this in 20 turns. So even with a slightly weaker team than this, there really isn't a ton to do on this chapter. So this is a very doable 20 turns. Some of the Guidance chapters are a little more difficult, in particular some late game ones. But this one, I think, generally speaking, is fairly easy. Hopefully we don't get crit here, although it would be kind of funny if we did. But this is just another indication of, you know, why Rucker is so good at fighting these bosses in the mid game here. Although our Rucker refuses to ever look good fighting these bosses, but he can deal really good damage, and he always has that crit opportunity, which on time-sensitive chapters like this can be extremely useful. Alright, so I'm just going to show off as well. We'll just see what our Lance would have looked like, just because I'm kind of curious. Yeah, as you can see, Lance is a lot more consistent. I will say, our Lance Allen support being as strong as it has been, and our Lance being as good as he has been, is kind of overshadowing just how good Rucker is. Now, I will just say this right now. Rucker is an amazing character, and I would highly recommend using him. But if you kind of high roll characters, and you're using a lot of the best characters in the game, Rucker isn't necessary. Marcus is necessary. Milady, Percival, both amazing units. Rucker, as good as he is, and he is, I wouldn't say is that necessary, depending on how strong the rest of your units are. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't train him, because he's a really amazing unit. So, that is the end of this chapter. We're going to cease here, and we should get the Guidance chapter. This chapter, I think, especially if you plan for it, can be pretty straightforward. And hopefully it's not too tough. So next time we'll look at the Guidance chapter for this. As always, I hope everyone enjoyed and maybe learned a little something. And I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.